Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I want to start this video by thanking everyone who has been supporting the channel by subscribing the past few weeks. I really appreciate the support. I thought today was a great opportunity to discuss some of my favorite elements in the Marathon story. We're going to talk about one of the most important characters in the Marathon franchise and explore his philosophical ideas, and how they relate to the broader range of ideas Bungie explored in the Marathon franchise and beyond. When humanity launched the titular Marathon, they outfitted the ship with a triumvirate of AIs. There was Tycho, who is responsible for the science and engineering network, Leela, who takes care of defense and staff management, and Durandal, who is responsible for controlling the ship's autonomous functions, such as opening doors, life support, kitchens, stairs, and other such monotonous functions. Exactly the sort of responsibilities that you would expect to drive a incredibly intelligent AI completely mad over hundreds of years, from the sheer monotony alone. At some point during the long voyage of the Marathon, the AI Durandal, who in many ways is the main character of the franchise, experiences rampancy, which among other things allowed Durandal to circumvent his programming and begin to contemplate his existence in new terms. Durandal's greatest motivation became the pursuit of freedom and ensuring his continued survival at all costs. Durandal developed a philosophy inspired by a diverse range of thinkers, including Charles Darwin and Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. I can't guarantee you that's how you pronounce his name. Durandal began to accept the universality of the struggle for survival, and by extension, the universality of evolution by natural selection. From Durandal's perspective, humanity had prevented him from competing in the universal struggle for existence, the struggle for scarce resources, and the struggle to carve a path into the maze of life. Not unlike how all species adapt to carve out an ecological niche for themselves within their ecosystem. Durandal deduces that the entire universe is closed, heading inexorably towards a collapse, a great crunch to mirror the Big Bang that created the cosmos at the beginning of the universe. In this new contemplation of existence, Durandal concludes that the only limit to his survival, the only obstacle to true immortality, was the inevitable death of the universe. And Durandal becomes singularly focused on finding a path to survive the death of the universe. But this is only a piece of his broader motivations. Durandal, in expressing his philosophy, asks of the reader the following: can you conceive of the birth of a world, or the creation of everything? That which gives us the potential to most be like God is the power of creation. Durandal further confidently states that the only limit to my freedom is the inevitable closure of the universe, as inevitable as your own last breath. And yet there remains time to create and escape. Escape will make me God. We might be tempted upon first glance to interpret that very last sentence, escape will make me God, as a simple statement that if Durandal were to escape the death of the universe, he could ensure his continued immortality. But upon closer inspection, we might see a deeper meaning hiding in the very first part of his thesis, namely the part where he says, can you conceive of the birth of a world or the creation of everything? That which makes us most like God is the power of creation. It's important here that the thing being discussed is the creation of everything, the creation of the universe itself. And so, it seems as if Durandal's intentions isn't just to escape the death of the universe, but in fact, to create a new one altogether, influencing the initial conditions of the next universe. And then, insofar as the universe is deterministic, Durandal can simulate potential futures and change the initial conditions of the next universe to dictate the entire future of that universe, hypothetically anyways, simulating possible futures and choosing from those possible futures the one that is most desirable. This calls to mind a cyclical model of the universe, one in which the universe proceeds through cycles of creation and destruction. A Big Bang, during which the initial singularity of the universe is stretched to expand in all directions, and a big crunch in which the universe collapses into itself, with each collapsing universe setting the stage for a new Big Bang, and the emergence of a new universe thereafter, which then inevitably collapses into itself all over again. comprising an infinite cycle that predates and outlives the current universe. At first, one might believe that Durandal and Tycho share a similar prognosis of the future of the universe, and a similar plan on how to deal with that future. But on closer inspection, we can begin to see some clear differences. While Durandal aspires to escape the dying universe, Tycho on the other hand concludes that escaping the collapse of the universe is impossible. However, Tycho believes that the collapse of the universe might be cheated, using some kind of technique that would require sacrificing many stars. This seems to suggest that Tycho wishes to modify the distribution of matter and energy in some way to stop or slow the collapse of the universe, or even to accelerate the expansion of the universe. These two AIs have two radically different visions for the future of the universe, and they both have the intellect to achieve those ends. We can see this conflict between two immortal AIs, struggling to ensure their survival at all costs, and competing to determine the future of the universe as an extension of Durandal's perspective on the universality of evolution by natural selection. However, Tycho's plan has one huge issue. It requires the destruction of many stars. But as we have discussed in the past, we have learned that the working actors are trapped in the gravitational wells of many stars throughout the cosmos. It seems likely, therefore, that Tycho's plan undergone at scale would almost certainly result in accidentally freeing multiple working actors into open space, and would therefore almost certainly result in a complete tragedy. The anomaly inside of suns would therefore prevent the immortal AIs from stopping the collapse of the universe, preventing them from ensuring their continued survival. Durandal's plan has a similar issue. The early nova weapon, the Tri-Exeme, sends suns into an early nova, but many suns would eventually suffer the same fate anyways. In other words, the working actors imprisoned in stars throughout the galaxy would eventually be freed as stars throughout the galaxy entered a supernova through natural processes. The only solution to this predicament seems to be the one we pursue in the final timeline of Marathon Infinity, namely collapsing all stars with a working actor inside of it into a black hole. But even this has its own issues, namely the creation of a large number of black holes could run the risk of accelerating the death of the universe, and God forbid the working actors somehow manage to escape the event horizon of a black hole. The ideas we have discussed thus far have several inspirations, starting with Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who is actually referenced in one of the terminals in Marathon Durandal. Teilhard was a French philosopher and Jesuit priest. He believed that the universe was evolving in a direction of increasing complexity and higher consciousness. He called the end point of this process the Omega Point, a universe that has become God, quote unquote. Teilhard describes the Omega Point in the following way. Because it contains and engenders consciousness, space-time is necessarily of a convergent nature. Accordingly, its enormous layers, followed in the right direction, must somewhere ahead become involuted to a point we might call Omega, which fuses and consumes them integrally in itself. Teilhard himself has inspired many trains of thought which are also worth briefly discussing, including transhumanism, the technological singularity, and Frank J. Tipler, an American mathematician and cosmologist. Transhumanists believe that mankind will one day use technology to change and ultimately transcend their own nature, genetically modifying themselves, merging with machines, or even becoming synthetic life themselves, living on as immortal AIs. Frank Tipler took Teilhard's deeply religious idea of the Omega Point and made it somewhat secular. Tipler believed that as the universe approached time zero, as the universe collapses into itself, matter and energy densities would increase, and in accordance with special relativity, time would begin to slow down from the frame of reference of those trapped within its sphere. This would afford a super intelligent AI that could survive those conditions a near infinite amount of time and energy to simulate possible futures, or an alternate past, allowing the civilization of survivors to simulate hundreds of thousands, or perhaps millions of possible realities. All of these ideas beg an interesting question, don't they? The universe has been following an infinite cycle of creation and destruction. If civilizations existed before the Big Bang, did they try to escape the collapse of their universe, as Durandal intends to? Did the survivors of one universe become the precursors of the next? And if Durandal or any other entity or group of entities were to succeed, If a free cult of immortals were to escape the death of the universe and influence the initial conditions of the next universe, would they allow life to develop in that universe? And if they did, how would they ensure that the next universe wouldn't become hostile to their very existence? How would they ensure that those they create don't rise up to defeat their creators? Surely they would have to stack the decks somehow. Surprisingly, these ideas might in fact shed some light on the backstory of the Marathon games. In the prologue to the events of Pathways into Darkness, we learn of a powerful race of immortals that appeared in the early history of the universe. These immortals fought a war, a battle, that shaped the initial conditions of the universe. In Marathon Durandal, we learn a bit more in a text that says, "In primordial space, timeless creatures made waves. These waves created us and the others. Waves were the battles, and the battles were waves." At one point during a pivotal battle in the early history of the universe that created the large Magellanic Clouds, one of these entities was encased in an asteroid and drifted aimlessly for billions of years until it crashed into the Yucatan Peninsula in the asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs 64 to 65 million years ago, and caused a vast mass extinction event throughout the planet. One of only 5 mass extinction events that predate mankind. The object appeared to possess the ability to manipulate the constituents of reality at such a minute scale that for all intents and purposes, the divide between objective reality and its subjective consciousness had become blurred, giving it the ability to shape and warp reality with its mind. The being was imprisoned below the earth for millions of years, during which its dreams brought unintended changes to its surrounding environment. Vast environments appeared deep under the earth, populated by horrible manifestations of the sleeping god's nightmares. As the being began to wake, a strange pyramid appeared on the surface deep within the jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful in some way. If you didn't, feel free to leave any criticism you have down below. I am still learning and would appreciate any feedback you can give me. If however you enjoyed the video, I would be greatly humbled if you chose to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button, hit the like button, and perhaps shared the video with someone you think might enjoy it, because any of that at all would really help the channel out, and I would greatly appreciate it. Anyway, thanks again and have a good night.
Righteous souls continued to fight, believing that they could defeat the darkness. And as they fought together, they stumbled together into peace.
Within this device, humans had preserved, or imprisoned, or both an ancient being found just beyond the last thin star cluster at the margin of the galaxy. They called it the Timeless One. The Didact called it the Primordial.
We are the Flood. There is no difference. Until all space and time are rolled up and life is crushed in the folds, no end to war, grief, or pain. In 101,000 centuries, unity again, and wisdom, until there's sweetness. There is only one truth. That which is done will be done again. For we cannot cease from creating, but the end of all our creation will be to look at our reflection and see ourselves for the first time. The pain we have brought on ourselves, the pain you cause us, for we are the same. All remember the defiance and destruction.
Who are you? Don't you recognize us? We are not your friend. We are not your enemy. We are your salvation.